Shields and swords, feel the wars, fighting my blood down to the core. Warriors from medieval age, fear the reign of night brigades. Crusades into the room, moving through the temples and tombs. You scared and place, prepare to face Professor Awesome and the minions of doom.
Professor Awesome and the minions of doom. Professor Awesome and the minions of doom. Professor Awesome and the minions of doom. Professor Awesome and the minions of doom. Professor Awesome and the minions of doom.
Hello minions, welcome back to Professor Awesome and the Minions of Doom. It has been a few weeks since you've heard from me, and there are a variety of reasons for this. One of them, an important one, is that I have been in grading prison at the end of the semester. I have an actual day job as a working professor, and there's a lot of grading to be done there, and preparing for some other things that are happening this summer. The other one is that I've really been working on a kind of philosophical redesign of Professor Awesome and the Minions of Doom netcast. I'm not going to talk a great deal about it today because there are a few things that are as boring as hearing a netcast talk about itself. But that's where I have been, and of course, you may be able to tell from the different camera and whatnot, and the different background, that I am currently in the Awesome Lair North, off the coast of Lake Michigan here. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about a couple things before I get into the Batman subject I wanted to talk about. The first one is that I will be speaking at the Fandom Fest. That is in the Mendel Center in Benton Harbor, Michigan, and that will be on June 9th. It runs from 11 to 7. I think I'll be speaking in the early afternoon, and it is free, which is nice. They've got sponsorship from some local libraries, and so because of that, it's free. And so I would really urge you, if you're here in the Midwest, to come out to the Fandom Fest. And if you're a Minion of Doom, introduce yourself to me. I'd really love to meet you. I meet a lot more of the Minions of Doom in the South, because that's where my home university is. But it would be good to meet you there. The other thing is that I'll be leaving for Asia not just a couple days after the Fandom Fest. And I'll be there for probably the whole month of June, so you will not get any live content from me again, probably until July at the earliest. So just if you think, well, he came back and then he disappeared again, this is why, as I'll be on the other side of the Great Firewall of China. Now, while everyone else is doing their critiques of Infinity War, which I have not seen, and don't really intend to see, and Solo, which I have not seen and maybe will see, depending. I actually want to talk about a completely different subject, and that is Batman and guns. The old Batman doesn't kill rule has been gone over many, many times, and sort of this ironic. In an ironic way. So for the idea that Batman doesn't kill has served different kinds of functions. An early function that it served was simply to make him, a Comics Code era good guy, right? He doesn't kill. Parents, you can feel safe with your kids buying this comic book because, he's not going to kill anybody. He is definitely a good guy, even though he dresses in black. And then later on, when comics decided it was more fun to be gritty, we ended up with that whole idea of Batman not killing, leading to questions about moral flexibility, where it's this sort of Dexter-like rule that he has, because we begin to question, how we see how close Batman could be to being a villain, and how by maintaining this rule, he's able to prevent himself from completely becoming a villain. And then eventually it becomes more about like the times that he breaks the rule and questions about moral ambiguity and when is it okay to kill and sort of these kinds of questions. Um, but I don't really want to talk about either of those. I really want to talk about the role of guns in killing, because the truth is, and this has been joked about many times, and this is a well-trodden field, uh, the the fact is that if you fought Batman the way that he fights with his non-lethal ways, you would be killed. Sometimes the batarangs are just boomerangs. Sometimes they're like shurikens, for example. Getting hit by either a boomerang or a shuriken is likely to badly injure you and very likely to kill you. When you look at the different things he has, like bolas or stun guns or things, all these, if they are used perfectly, if the bola really does only wrap around the legs and not hit someone in the face or whatever, if the stun gas, if the person doesn't have any sorts of health problems, which in the world of Batman, where everyone has some sort of physical anomaly or freakiness about them, is a very big if. Those things would very often kill people. And of course, I'm not the first person to point this out, that Batman uses very lethal weapons all the time. And we're supposed to imagine that this means that he doesn't. And I think in large part, this has to do with simply the prohibition on guns. And so in the world of Batman, guns seem to be equated with lethality in a way that I think has gone into the larger culture. A point that has been made by many, many people is that, in America, the gun debate hasn't fallen along civil libertarian lines as you would expect a Bill of Rights debate to run. Instead, it's not even political. I suspect it's far more of a cultural debate where you see people saying things like, why, no one would, when someone says no one would ever need a gun, what they really mean is, without realizing it, what they really mean is, where I live, the only people who have guns are criminals and the police. Well, I'm not the police. And so if you have a gun, you're either a criminal or about to be a criminal, and you have no valid use for it, which is why then people, and this implies that you either live in an urban area where guns are a scourge to you, or a suburban area where your ability to call on an officer of the law with a gun is right there for you. On the other hand, as we move further out from the suburbs and into the rural areas, the idea of why would anyone need a gun seems like an absurd question. It's often a basic tool, not just for protection, but for other things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to get into all that because I already can see the hate mail coming in. And I would ask each of you, before you send your angry message to me, to think for a moment about whether you're taking into consideration the worldview, the daily life of the other person on the other side. Now, I'll take your hate mail now and ignore it, as I always do. However, and so for, essentially half the country, the idea that you would need a gun is absurd. And for the other half, the idea that you would not need a gun is absurd. And this, I think, in large part fuels a great deal of the debate, where it's not simply a matter of it's not even simply a political matter. It's simply a matter of each person's daily life. So what does this have to do with Batman particularly, other than the fact that he doesn't use a gun? Well, I think Batman, in terms of, and I would include Marvel and DC together, lump them both together, is probably the superhero who's most associated with a particular city. Now, you can make arguments that I think you can make arguments for what about Metropolis with Superman, or what about Spider-Man, that they are associated with a particular city, or the Flash, or you can have, or the Arrow. Sorry, you can have your different people in here, but I would argue that in, say, for example, Spider-Man, the city itself is not really so much a character. Metropolis is a place, but it's just sort of a catch-all place. Whereas in Batman, Gotham is almost another character in that. And one of the geniuses of the of the Batman designs from films of the 80s and 90s was that they did really recognize this idea that Gotham is not just insert city here, but rather is itself a kind of character in all this. And Batman is really associated with being not just a vigilante, which arguably most superheroes are, but is in fact associated with being an urban vigilante. And so when Batman does all these incredibly lethal things, we can still look at him and say, well, he is fulfilling his non-kill rule because he didn't use a gun. Because in these sorts of urban areas like this, guns are associated with lethality, even when, so many other violent crimes, or not even crimes, so much more violence takes place using other things, from your fists to knives to something you pick, a broken bottle, whatever it might be. And so I think in some ways then this no guns rule associated with lethality, the kind of cognitive dissonance in that very much informs and reflects sort of gun debates that we have in the United States, in that this idea that we associate guns with killing but not other things with killing. So let me give you a contrary example to this. I own several swords and I do know how to use them. And that is actually my primary method of defense in the home. I have had a few times where I thought there was an intruder and I came at them with a sword. Most notably, when I got a new one night, I had just gotten a new dishwasher and I put it on delay. And when it went off, I was in bed and I heard a strange noise that I didn't know, and it was a loud noise, and I knew there was someone in the house. And I went into my kitchen ready to dice someone up. And of course, my reason for using a sword is the same reason that some people would use a shotgun in their house for home defense, which is to say it's good short term, up close, if you need to. And also, in my own case, I'm probably better with a sword than I am with a gun in terms of my defense. I guess I have not compared apples and oranges in life before, and I hope not to have to do that. But no one ever says to me, "Why do you need a sword?" A sword is just a tool for killing, and arguably it is. I mean, I suppose I could spread butter with a sword very awkwardly, but the truth is that the swords exist simply to kill and maim, or also for decoration, or to use in other ways as well. And in the world of Batman, then, this whole arsenal he has of supposedly non-lethal weapons, then, are ways of sort of talking about mitigated violence. Violence in which we say, well, I'm going to be violent in a way, but I'm going to be violent with a thing which could possibly kill you, and in fact probably will kill you, but is designed maybe not to kill you. Whereas, once you are firing a gun at someone, you bare minimum want to put them down, if not kill them. And so I think for Batman, though it has been obviously a cause of a great deal of, very cliche joking about his non-kill rule, I think it actually gets at something a lot deeper about how in the last decades, the way that we look at guns as somehow synonymous with violence in the ways that other weapons are not, and in the ways that we associate other things with potentially being tools in the way that other things, in the way that we don't extend the same courtesy to guns, even when we can sort of look and see people using guns as tools, for hunting and for defense and these sorts of things. And so I think this also explains a good deal about why Batman has certain kinds of weapons which kind of, in various iterations of Batman, are kind of like modified guns. It's a sort of a gun. But it's not really a gun. The idea is, again, we're always sort of mitigating away from that to get us to this. In a sense, I think, if you are in an urban area where you see guns as a kind of unmitigated violence, not as a way of preventing violence, but as a way of inflicting violence. In any case, those were just a few of my thoughts about Batman and guns and the sort of broader cultural implications of them. I'm not really that interested in the politics of it, so I'm sure I will get a lot of hate mail about the politics of it, but that's okay because I don't care. Again, if you are watching this before June 9th, 2018, you can come see me in the Mendel Center in Benton Harbor, Michigan at the Fandom Fest. So until next time, I'll see you minions later.